Hello, how's everybody doing? I hope you had a great week. I hope everything's seeming clear in the class so far. I wanted to give you a few notes on what I saw happening last week in the class and how I think things are going. Uh, First, it was great to meet everyone. You guys have some interesting lives. I appreciated all your posts. Um, one of the things I found out about myself and one of the things I was thinking about last week was I've always been a little skeptical of online education. I've always been a little skeptical of online students, and I've taught online quite a bit, but um, my experiences have never really been great. Uh, One of the things that I learned by reading your posts and your introductions is that online education is really wonderful for people who really need it and who will really work at it. And it sounds like we've got some people in this class who online education is ideal for. So I hope we make this a great class. I hope that it's a good experience for you. Um, I wanted to say that the discussions over Durkheim and Dewey, there were some really fabulous discussions there. Some people thinking at a very high level and writing at a very high level um, to talk about the ideas, the difference between uh, a democratic mindset for education or an elitist mindset for education, the impacts of education on democracy. The ideas that I saw in those posts were really great, and I wanted to tell you how much I appreciated your input. You'll notice on the handout that I posted yesterday about my responses to online posts, I'm going to take the approach that our discussion boards are our primary space of education. Well, the discussion boards and the textbook, and the primary places where you'll be learning. You might learn something from me sitting here babbling. You might learn something from a handout that I give you, but really, I think the place where we will practice our learning most will be the discussion boards, and that's probably the place where I'll be doing my most direct instruction so that when I see a question come up or a comment come up where there's an opportunity for me to respond and where we might call a teachable moment where I can say, hey, this is a great idea, but have you thought about this? Or this is a really good point. Here's a resource that might help you explore it more. That's probably where I will be most involved, and I think the discussion boards are where you will actually learn the most if you're actively involved there. I wanted to mention the quiz grades. We've got a couple people who got hundreds on both quizzes. A couple people who got 80s on both quizzes. You get an 80% if you miss one question on a quiz. It's because it's only a 5-point quiz. Each question is worth 20% of the overall quiz grade. I wanted to mention about the quiz grades. Each individual quiz grade is not a big deal. Each individual quiz question is not a big deal. I use the quiz grades to assess how frequently you are reading for the class. Are you reading every reading assignment? Are you reading them closely? Are you simply just skimming over it and then taking the quiz? Have you not bought your book? I use the reading quizzes just to find out if you are actively involved in class. So I don't care if you miss a question. I don't care if you miss a couple questions, as long as you're not always doing that. What I care about is seeing a consistent participation on the quizzes and seeing a consistent grade on the quizzes. So if you're getting 4s and 5s, you've got no worries. That's 100% easy. I don't even do the math. If you're getting 2s and 3s, that's a little bit of worry. You should probably pick up your reading a little bit more. You should probably be a little more careful when you go through the text so that you can make sure that you are understanding what's going on. You should probably take notes and have the text out with you when you take the quiz. If you're getting consistent 0s and 1s or X's, there's a problem. That means you're probably not reading at all. Maybe you haven't bought the text. And I've mentioned that a couple times. It's surprising to me how many people have contacted me and said that they don't have the text yet. It's a college class. It doesn't matter if it's a meeting online. So there's quiz grades. I mentioned that just because I don't want you to get freaked out about missing a question or missing two questions on a quiz. It's not a big deal. I want to see your constant participation, and you should be able to tell by now. We've got 4 quizzes up. You should be able to tell by now that the quiz questions are not hard. They're pretty easy as long as you've read the material. But if you haven't read the material, it's pretty easy to get to mess up on the quiz questions. I wanted to mention a couple of points about the discussion board. I've made these points both on the discussion board and in the forums handout that I gave you this week, but I wanted to say it out loud too. Make sure that when you do the discussion boards that you answer the question that I've asked. It's okay. The questions are pretty open-ended, and it's okay to go off of those questions once you've done your initial post. But for that initial post, I want to see that you're participating on that board and that you're responding to the question that I asked. And I also wanted to say on a couple of the posts, I would like to see some people do some more work. Simply showing up and writing a couple of lines is not doing a college level post for an online class. You should actually have a significant post there of a paragraph or two talking about deeper level ideas. You should have you should put some thought into it. It shouldn't be something that you just type out on your phone as you're waiting for your food to come from Bob Evans. And then also, when you're doing the post on the readings, make sure you're responding to the readings. Make sure you're bringing the readings in and talking about them at the deep level. If you just say something like, Dewey was really smart, I liked his ideas, that's not responding to the reading. I want to say one other thing, and then I'll get on to what I really wanted to talk about today. And that one other thing is, I'm surprised about how many people have not done any work in the class yet. This class is being run with 2 sections, so that's about 50 students, and we've got about 20 students who are active. That's a great number of students who have not done very much at all. You are going to very quickly fall behind and run into some difficulty in the class if you don't get some work posted. One other thing I want to point out, and if you haven't logged on or you're not paying attention to anything that's going on, you're not going to hear this. But I don't remember the date. It may be the 7th. But we have a never attended deadline. If you have not done adequate level of work in the class before that never attended deadline, I can claim that you've never been in the class or you've never been a member of the class in any meaningful way, and you'll get dropped from the class. So if you intend to be in this class, if you intend to do the work for the class, you need to get active quickly. Okay, so that's all the both positives and negatives that I've seen in the first week. I want to talk for a couple minutes about democracy and writing, and one of the reasons why we're doing this class, and actually one of the reasons why democracy is one of my scholarly interests, why I care about that. I took a course. Well, I was an American literature person to start before I went into composition and before I went into philosophy. And the American literature is filled with thoughts of democracy and writing about democracy. But my scholarly focus started to change when I was working on my PhD, and I took a course in democratic education, and I really started reading democratic theory, because democratic theory doesn't sound like it's that fascinating. It sounds like it's something we should all know. I mean, we're a part of a democracy, or we say we're democratic, but I think it's actually a much deeper idea. And when you start to think about what the meaning of democracy is and what its effects are and where it enters and how we use democracy in our everyday lives, democracy becomes a much deeper idea. I want to make sure we understand when we say democracy, we're not just saying, you vote, so you're part of a democracy. Voting is just the most surface level part of democracy. It's like the entry level part of democracy. It's the first thing you do. maybe it gets you interested in being part of politics, but really, voting is about politics more than it is about democracy. For democracy, you have to have participation. Democracy is all about participation. That is, the people who are who work, who live under an ideal of democracy are participatory members of that democracy. Because of this, democracy has a couple of concepts that are really essential. And you see both Plato and Dahl talking about these concepts. Um, I'll get a little bit into those, but mostly I'm going to be referring to the larger ideas. I've considered maybe doing a longer lecture on just the idea of democracy, and then maybe when we get to justice, maybe doing a longer lecture on that. But we're not. This isn't a course in political theory; it's a course in writing, and I want to make sure we're focused on that. So, here's the basic things I want to get to about democracy. Democracy has a few major concepts that are really important. One is all voices are equal. Your voice is equal to my voice. My voice is equal to Barack Obama's. Barack Obama's voice is equal to Kanye West's. All voices are equal. They all matter. And I'm not referring to Black Lives Matter there, which is an essential idea. And actually, it's an essential idea that is essentially democratic. It's calling out for the fact that black voices matter. But all voices are equal. All voices in a democratic society have the individual right of participation, and so nobody's voice is more important than another's. Along those lines, all voices can participate. All voices can join in. Now, there are places in our society where voices are restricted. If you go to a classroom, you have somebody who's leading the classroom, and other voices that aren't always allowed to speak. If you go to a courtroom, some voices are restricted. But the idea of democracy, as far as in determining how we work together and how we govern ourselves, all voices can participate. This is why it's when something like protesters being shut out of a state capital, or when protesters are cordoned off when during a public speech and aren't allowed to get to a candidate to protest, that's a real violation of democracy. If all voices are equal and all voices participate, then one of the essential ideas of democracy is that all voices should participate. There's kind of an inherent responsibility to participation. And the inherent responsibility to participation is this. If you want other people to be able to listen to your voice, you have to listen to other people's voices. It's a reciprocal agreement. Democracy is about reciprocity. I just messed up the word. It's about everybody agreeing to accept other people. Because of this, if you want other people to accept your voice, you have to use your voice and you have to participate. And everybody has to participate to ensure that all voices are equal, all voices remain equal, all voices are able to participate. This idea of reciprocal democracy is really important because it ensures that we maintain the democratic ideal, the democratic ethic, where we act in democratic ways and we believe in democratic ways. Now, you may wonder, if this isn't a course in political philosophy, why am I spending so much time talking about democracy? Well, one of the things that I found when I took that course in democratic education was that the ideas of democracy are really essential when it comes to the ideas of writing. You see my son hiding in the background there. He's waiting to go so that we can go out and do Saturday stuff. So, this is Nathaniel. Say hi, Nathaniel.
Hi.
Okay. Hello. Nobody's saying hi back. So, now you can leave. Say bye.
Bye.
Okay. Go wait in your room. I'll be there in a minute. Let me think about where we were. Sorry. Uh, the idea of democracy is essential to the idea of writing. And here's why. If democracy is reciprocal, that means all voices matter, all voices are equal, all voices can participate. Well, you can kind of see how that works in writing. A writer's voice matters, and all writers' voices matter. Doesn't mean that all writers' voices are listened to equally, and in democracy, not all voices are listened to equally. It doesn't mean that all writers' voices have the same amount of strength, and in democracy, all citizens' voices don't have the same amount of strength. But it does mean that all writers can write. You have a right to write, and with that right to write, you have a responsibility to write. You have a responsibility to practice your voice, and you have a responsibility to respect others' voices. The idea of writing in democracy starts to come together when we begin to think about people working in conjunction to talk about an idea, as we're doing in this class. When you start to think about how a group of scholars come together to explore meanings. In our first paper, we're thinking about the idea of public voice. So we have a group of people, a group of scholars who have come together, and well, the decision on what to study was not democratic because somebody had to make the decision so we could get going. The work that we're going to do together is somewhat democratic. We're going to come together with our ideas, and we're going to see how they work in the public forum. Let's think about the assignment for just a second, because I want to make sure that you're working on it. I want to make sure that you're understanding it, and I want to make sure that you're not too freaked out about it. Okay. One of the things I want to point out is that this is an assignment that's growing directly out of your 131 experience and into your 132 experience. It's kind of a bridge between those two experiences. In this class, we're really focused on argumentation and research, and the use of research in writing, in academic writing. In 131, you were focused more on kind of understanding what college writing is, getting exposed to college writing, and practicing college writing, kind of upping your literacy game. Well, with this assignment, what we're doing is kind of kicking you back a little bit into more of a narrative paper where you're more talking about a specific experience you've had and then making that experience meaningful. And then on top of that, adding in some use of other people's voices, of Dewey or Durkheim. So I'm asking you to practice good use of sources at the same time as developing your own argument based on your interpretation of experience. Let me point out a couple things about the assignment. So you've got the writing assignment number one, and I know you can read it, but I want to point out a couple things. One is that in the first paragraph I say, for this paper then you will be writing a literacy narrative wherein you focus on the telling, explaining, and analyzing of a specific literacy moment from your life, wherein you learned how to, or how not to, speak up in public. Notice that I say a specific literacy moment. And if you think about what a moment means, it means that it happened in time, on a single date, at a single moment. You can say on August 24th, 2016, at 4 o'clock p.m., this happened. And you can point to the time. Now, the realities of our memories is that we don't necessarily know the exact time things happen. I'm not asking for that. But I do want you to focus on a specific moment. Not a life of moments, not a year of moments, not a month of moments, but one thing that happened. Now, the context around that one thing might need some more explanation, but I want you to focus on one thing that will help you explore an idea. And the reason for that is that experience becomes evidence for the claims that you want to make in this paper. It becomes the frog in your biology experiment that you're cutting open so that you can point out important details and make conclusions about those details. Your experience is your source of evidence. It's not just a story you're telling, it is evidence for the claims that you make, and you should be using it as such rather than just telling the story. So, you focus on a specific moment. Your goal in this assignment will be to use the concepts from our text to explore a very specific experience you've had in speaking out, through which you discovered a specific meaning about your public voice, and then tell the story of that experience to make that meaningful for your readers. The point of this paper is the meaning. Your experience is only the evidence. Just because it's a great and amazing experience doesn't mean it's going to be meaningful unless you make it meaningful. And the way that you make it meaningful is through your analysis and interpretation of the experience. I want to point out another aspect of this paper, which is that you need to be using Dewey or Durkheim in your paper. You need to be referring to them and talking about them and quoting from them or summarizing them. You need to have citations as well for that. It's a 3-page paper, so you don't need to be talking about them the whole time, but you should have they should be a significant part of the paper. They're another part of your evidence for the claims that you want to make about public voice. I want to read this final line in your paper, in your assignment. Ultimately, your paper should lead your readers to a very specific meaning about the power, effectiveness, limitations, and potential of our public voices. You probably can't cover all that, but you should be making a very specific claim about public voices and what they can or can't do. You should identify what that claim is and then set out to prove that claim with your narrative. This paper is not easy. It shouldn't be easy. We're in our second composition class. You should be spending time really thinking about the paper, really developing the paper, really working through your ideas. One of the things that you'll hopefully start to get to in this class, if you haven't gotten there already, is an understanding that writing doesn't happen just by flipping on Microsoft Word and you start typing. Writing happens before you turn on Microsoft Word. Writing happened from the moment you first read this assignment until the moment that you hit print or send. Spend some time working on it. Spend some time using our boards this week. You'll notice one of our forums is asking you to post about your writing experience for this assignment. What struggles or questions or problems or triumphs that you have in this assignment. So use that board. You also notice that I have a chat room up. I'm not sure how well that chat room is going to work. It depends on how many people are actually on there. I've gotten on it a couple times already and haven't found anybody on there, so it may not work. But there is a chat room there. You can post in there and see if anybody responds, and then maybe get some more real-time discussion. You can always email me. You can always stop by my office hours. I'm happy to talk with you both about how the class is going and about your paper assignments. So feel free to email me at any time. I guess that's about it today. I may be posting a lecture about Dewey and Durkheim and Plato and Dahl this week, but I may just hold off too. I'm not sure how useful that would be. So have a good discussion. Good luck and start working on your paper. Start posting about your paper. Contact me if you have any questions. We'll see you on the boards.